Hey, welcome to Energy Today. So today we're going to talk about Aramco, Shale, and the exit from Shale. So what is Aramco up to? What's Shell up to? What's happening in the world of energy? A couple of things that I find pretty interesting. Number one, Shell has now announced that they're leaving the Permian. They've got, I think, a $9.6 billion sale of all the Permian assets to Conoco. So this comes after Shell being pretty adamant that they were going to be a big player in the Permian. I've watched them. I find them an interesting company. But the other part that a lot of people maybe didn't know is that Shell also has sold a significant part of their Canadian shale assets, which would be the Duverney. They've sold that to Crescent Point. Here's the note on that sale. So I watched the commentary on what's going on with Shell, and immediately lots of the commentary analysts said this is climate change, this is reducing carbon footprint, this is, okay, maybe, but I also went to Shell's release to Reuters. It says nothing about this is reducing carbon or issues with climate change, issues with stockholders. It just says they're exiting. So the exit in Canada was pretty quiet in relative terms. The exit in the Permian is a pretty loud event because it's big dollars, and the fact that one of the major players, one of the top 10 players, is saying, I'm out of here, totally 100%, not casting off properties, but just totally exiting. So I find it interesting. I don't buy the fact that a lot of the analysts have said this has to do with climate change, carbon reduction, stockholder advocacy. I think Shell has determined, as more and more companies will and have, that shale is a hard business. There is another vlog coming up about Exxon and their quest for 1 million barrels a day. Hasn't gone very well. We've seen Pioneer at that, and here's what the decline rates look like in the Permian. And they're not dissimilar in other shales. You can look at the Barnett that was supposed to supply gas for 100 years. It's, I think, 2 BCF a day is about all that's coming out. No rigs working there. It got just carpet drilled, and I'm not sure that it received a really good treatment from a technical standpoint. It was just put up rigs and go as fast as you can. Is the same thing happening in the Permian? Is that now the new game? We did a vlog. Here's a link to it about going to extended reach laterals. Is that the best way to maximize recovery? Or is that just the way to get your next quarterly profits higher? I have my views, but that's for another subject. So that's Shell. I think Shell has found shale is difficult, challenging, hard. You know, you have to have lots of rigs running just to maintain level production, let alone to grow it. And that's my guess, is Shell has determined that maybe that's not their expertise. So what is Shell good at? Of course, they're good at deep water. They're good at offshore. I went back and looked at the last 24 months worth of announcements from Shell, and it looks like it's the offshore market and some bigger, more remote international markets. I don't think it's Midland, Texas. I don't think it's Alberta and British Columbia in Canada. So we'll see what happens with that. But now let's take that to what it means for Aramco. Do they care? Does it matter? And here's my comments. I've dealt with Aramco in some of my previous work and businesses, and I happen to know that I met a couple of the people that were developing the shale strategy for Saudi Arabia, for Aramco, and it's been a while. I'm sure there's lots of other people involved, as we go forward. But here's the coincidence, is when I met these guys, they were introduced to me as a couple of ex-Shell engineers. So there's no, as far as I know, no business relationship with Shell and Aramco, but you grab your expertise from who you think are the best in the industry, and Aramco got a couple of guys that were from Shell. So that may be good, that may be bad, it just depends on your perspective. But what would or potentially could be disconcerting for Aramco is that if their expertise came from Shell, and now Shell is saying, we're out of these shale plays, it might require a second look. I'm not sure. I have the feeling that what is happening in the Permian is going to be replicated in Saudi Arabia for Aramco. I happen to think that might be a bad decision, but we will see. And just as a comparative, Shell's been in Western Canada, the Montney, the Duverney, a couple of different shale plays for a long time. A couple other companies that are more recent startups are, in fact, the biggest gas producer now in Western Canada, started in 2008, is not even using the same technology that Shell and a whole bunch of other people have used in the Permian, and they have developed a remarkable market cap. Their process is consistent. So just looking at it, what I would say is, if I was Aramco, if my strategic planning came from people that came from Shell, and Shell is now saying, yeah, we're out of here, it might be worthwhile for Aramco to take a look and make sure that the path they're going down is the path they want to go down, because it looks like it didn't work out very well for Shell. I have to say, I think Aramco's an amazingly well-run company. I also think Shell is. But we have our expertise, and I think Shell has now made a conclusion that theirs isn't in shale, probably offshore deep water. Maybe they're back in the North Sea. We'll see. And thanks for watching Energy Today.